I was at that point of desperation where I just wanted to end it all. I didn't like where my life was going. I talked about this a couple days ago where I just felt like a loser. I just felt like a loser. I didn't have no direction. I didn't have no prospects. I didn't have no motivation. And I just felt like I'm better off not here than being here. And my intentions were definitely to kill myself. When I think about it, it's crazy now, but yeah, that evening my intentions were to kill myself. So I put a gram of fentanyl, a gram, not a point. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know the difference, but a gram of fentanyl will kill most people, and that was my intentions. And I put it in the syringe, and I sat there contemplating for at least a good hour or two, and I got to the point where, we talk about the case of the buckets, and I just got that, and I was just like, fuck it, let's do this. I have nothing to offer no more in this world.
All right, welcome to episode 3 of the Recovery Plus podcast with me and my co-host Jama, Maxie. Today on the show, we have our coworker, our friend, and our fellow recovered addict, Donavan Bruce, and he's here to tell his story. I've heard his story before, and when I first heard him talk about where he came from and the challenges that he had to overcome, it inspired me tremendously. He's one of those people whose story, if I heard it when I first came in to recovery and I wasn't ready to do the work, I would have said, I'm nothing like this guy. And I don't think this program is for me. But when I came in and I was really ready to do the work, if I heard a story like his, I would have said, if he can get out of the mess that he was in and overcome the challenges that he had to overcome, then what I have in front of me, I can handle. So I'm excited to invite Donavan onto the show and to hear him tell his story. Welcome to the show, Donavan.
Thank you, Vaz. Thank you, Jama, for having me. It's an honor that you guys asked me to be a part of your program or your podcast. And yeah, let's get busy.
Nice. So the first question I always like to start with is I like to ask our guests, how bad did it get for you near the end of your using career? Like how dark was it, and what was your rock bottom?
Well, I would like to say my rock bottom was March 23rd, 2019, when I tried to kill myself. It wasn't no ideations or thoughts. It was an actual attempt. I I had a bag of drugs on me, if that's okay. I'm being raw, I'm being open, I'm honest.
For sure. Anything goes.
I had a bag of fentanyl on me, well over an ounce, and I was just sitting in my room in London, Ontario, far from my family here in Toronto, where I just got a bail on weapons charges and drug charges, and I remember getting bail and just saying to myself, I can't believe I'm back in this situation again. And sitting in my room by myself with nobody around, I was at that time I was taking anabolic steroids, and I had syringes in my room, and I remember seeing other people shoot heroin,
Yeah.
and I was at that point of desperation where I just wanted to end it all. I didn't like where my life was going. I talked about this a couple days ago where I just felt like a loser. I just felt like a loser. I didn't have no direction. I didn't have no prospects. I didn't have no motivation. And I just felt like I'm better off not here than being here. And my intentions were definitely to kill myself. When I think about it, it's crazy now, but yeah, that evening my intentions were to kill myself. So I put a gram of fentanyl, a gram, not a point. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know the difference, but a gram of fentanyl will kill most people, and that was my intentions. And I put it in the syringe, and I sat there contemplating for at least a good hour or two, and I got to the point where, we talk about the case of the buckets, and I just got that, and I was just like, fuck it, let's do this, I have nothing to offer no more in this world. And I actually looked for a vein, and I looked for a vein in my hand, and there was a vein popping out in my hand right here, and I was like, okay, this seems like it's easy. I don't have to go no further up my arm. It's accessible, put it that way. And I proceeded to take this syringe and try to hit my vein. And the big word is try, because I didn't know how to shoot heroin. I didn't know how to use needles. Um, I missed the vein, but because there was so much in that shot, it kind of got in my system where it did put me out for at least a good 18, 19 hours. When I woke up the next morning, thinking to myself, why am I still here? I've had a lot of rock bottoms. I don't ever think it deterred me from going back out there and doing the things I was doing. But this last rock bottom was there's something that happened while this rock bottom occurred. And I believe for me, my spiritual awakening happened before I got into any program. And before I did any step work. And while I was under, I kept hearing, and this is the truth, I kept hearing in my deep sleep that I'm not ready for you. I'm not ready for you. And there's more to do. There's more to do. And I kept hearing it. It kept playing over. And I didn't understand it until later on in my early parts of my recovery. I did not understand it, but it makes sense today of why that was being said in my ear. And when I woke up that morning, I woke up crying. I was like, I'm such a failure. I'm such a loser. I can't even, you know, succeed in trying to kill myself. And I woke up and I didn't know what to do. I definitely didn't know what to do. And I reached out to my father, and it was a very hard conversation to talk to him about, because my father knew about my past and the street life, the gang life, but he didn't know how bad. He didn't know about my addiction problem. Right, as I said, I'm from Toronto, but I kept moving further and further away from my loved ones, so they didn't have to be exposed or see how bad it really got with my addiction problem. That geographical change. I did that. I went from Toronto, Hamilton to London, and it just continuously got worse. And to be, like, I would like to say, but for the grace of God, that I'm here today, because I didn't know how to shoot heroin. So that was like my saving grace, because I didn't know how to. So I think if I did know how to, I wouldn't be here. I know I wouldn't be here. And I think that's the day, March 24th, 2019, that I started my journey of recovery. But that evening was, I think, my rock bottom. I've always, there's been so many times in my active addiction where I used to use, and I would say, man, I don't want to wake up tomorrow. I'll be just take me away. God, please just take me. I'm not I don't want to do this no more. But I never got to the point of actually trying to kill myself until that evening. And then calling my father, asking him for help, because I didn't know where or who to call. And just because my father is a recovering drug addict himself, it took a lot of me putting my pride and ego aside to make that call. I felt a lot of shame and guilt. One thing that really stood out for me when I made that call is, I just tried to kill myself knowing that I have a daughter who is suffering too, right? I'm a firm believer that apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and it's like, how dare I leave her to suffer by herself? At least I gotta make some kind of effort to be a father, be present. And I guess that's where, like I said, my journey started that day, the next day. That's what my rock bottom looked like for me.
Yeah, that's such a profound experience. And I think, people talk about physical bottoms and things like that a lot. And early on, it doesn't deter them. But that emotionality you felt when you said, essentially you don't want to be here anymore. And you're not just thinking anymore, you're actually taking action towards not doing that. And I can tell that really impacted you spiritually because you had that awakening. So for some of the viewers, they don't really know the adversities and stuff, your life before all of this, because at this point in your life, um, you have been through a tremendous amount of adversity. So tell us the role that adversity and what adversity looked like for you in your childhood, and what was that experience like growing up?
Wow, adversity. I think adversity should be the name of my memoir, probably. Like I've been faced with adversity, I think, ever since birth. Um, you two knowing my story, but as I'm going to get into my story and tell you a bit about tell you, I'll be open to tell you all my story. Um, I talk about how my father, who I just mentioned, was a drug addict, recovering drug addict, alcoholic, but then he was living that street life of gangster, pimp, whatever in the mid 70s of Toronto, and my mother was a lady of the night. I'm being politically correct.
Mhm.
I'm not that kind of person. I'm very raw, and I'm
Yeah.
honest. So she was a prostitute. You know what I mean? That's who she was. She knew better. She had a lot of trauma in her background. If I want to dive into a little bit of her background, um, which makes sense to me today, why my mother was unable to provide for me. My mother survived at the age of 5. Her and her cousin were kidnapped by at the time, a serial killer in Toronto who ended up killing my mom's cousin in front of her, and she ended up getting away. So trauma for my mother was very prevalent. You know what I mean? Like and growing up, she probably experienced a lot more than most of us would ever experience just through that one incident, which is very scarring. You know what I mean? You can't undo that or erase something like that. You just can't. And
Mhm.
I get it today, right? I didn't
Yeah.
understand it growing up, like what she went through until it was actually told to me while I was like maybe in my mid 30s. I'm 42 years old, so that wasn't too long ago when I found out about this tragic incident that happened with my mother and my mother's cousin. My mother's mother, my grandmother, was an alcoholic. So addiction really ran really deep in my bloodline between my parents. So if I want to get back to that adversity piece, so you think about having a mother and a father who are in that lifestyle, but are also addicted to the lifestyle and the drugs. So my father wasn't present in my life. He had my mother on the side. He had the good woman on the other side, where he doted his time and his attention to her. But my mother was just that, as we would say, just a piece of ass at that time. I'm being honest. I keep it real, and
Yeah.
that's how it was, right? This is who you are, and that's how I felt. My dad might say no, it wasn't like that, but that's how I felt.
Mhm.
She was a second. She wasn't the first. You know what I mean? She wasn't a priority. So we all know in the early 80s when in the metro housing community, crack cocaine hit early 80s, and it didn't spare nobody who was in the metro housing community, and it took a lot of families, ruined a lot of families. My family as well. I have two brothers from my mother. My older brother probably didn't have to experience the things me and my younger brother had to experience because my grandmother stepped in and took him from my mother, and which is a blessing. I'm happy for him. But she took him, and when my mother had me, I would say by the time I was 4 years old, I know it was by the time I was 4 years old, her addiction really just took off. I share that her responsibility to me wasn't really there. You know, any drug addict, alcoholic who's, and I don't want to say that word real, but a type 3, we'll use type 3. You know, our priorities is not to our children or to our responsibilities of work or feed our children or make sure, you know, we're well groomed, taken care of. That wasn't her priority. I understand it again, like I said today. Um, so I do most of my memories start at 4 years old with my mother's addiction. Again, my father wasn't around. And I also tell when I speak my story is that my first addiction started when I was 4 years old. You know, when you have a mother who's not taking care of you, feeding you, and grooming you, I had to learn survival skills at a young age at 4. So I picked up the addiction of stealing. Stealing became a way of feeding myself and taking care of myself because I wasn't getting fed at home. I do recall growing up, my nickname was Bum Bum. And the reason my nickname was Bum Bum because I would literally ask friends in my neighborhood, you know, I'm hungry. Can I eat at your house? Can your mother feed me? And that's what it came. I was like a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 year old bum. You know, I didn't ask for this, but that's just what it was. If I get I like to talk about the traumas. You know, I believe trauma happens in so many different forms. You know, visual, mental, emotional, spiritual, and sexual. And I probably experienced all of those traumas by the time I was like in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll touch on my first traumatic event. It was a visual trauma. I was like 7, maybe 7, 8 years old. And we got 3 buildings, a 20, 30, and 40 building. Jane and Falstaff is where I was born and raised. Well, I would say born until I was like 10, 11 years old and raised then. But I was walking in between the 20 and 30 building and out of my peripheral, and I mean no more than 15 feet away from me, I seen somebody fall from the building onto the concrete, and all I could see was blood, right? Blood everywhere. And you're 8 years old. You don't know how to process what you just seen. To you, it's scary because at a young age, you know, I grew up watching stuff like, you know, I used to be scared of watching Thriller, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. The Michael Jackson show. You had stuff like Freddy Krueger and all that stuff. You see fake blood, but when you see real blood like that, it's like, oh my God, this is real. I don't know how to process this, but it stained my memory.
Do you
And
remember? Do you remember if like fear was the dominant emotion that you felt during that experience?
I wouldn't say it was fear. I was more enamored. It was interesting to see something like that. And again, this wouldn't be my first, this wouldn't be my last encounter of seeing people die in front of me violently either. So I would say it became a norm as I got older, seeing people shot, stabbed in front of me. Yeah, so I would say that was my first form of trauma, the visual trauma. I didn't know it was traumatic at the time. I definitely didn't know, but as I got older and started digging and talking to psychotherapists, you know, it made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So my mother had my younger brother when I was 7. We're 7 years old. They're 7 years apart. So I do recall when she had my younger brother, she was doing crack cocaine. So my brother came out, as they would say, a crack baby. He was had to stay in the hospital for a couple extra weeks when he was born, and you know, my mother called the house, and I was at the house, and she asked me, "What do you want to name the baby?" And she gave me the gift of being able to name my little brother. I'm not going to give out his name, but I named him, and it was a great feeling when she brought him home. This is where growing up really meant growing up, because now my mother comes home, and her responsibility to me wasn't there. But just imagine what her responsibility was to my younger brother. It was the same as it was to me. It wasn't there. So I had to grow up very quick that way, as becoming responsible and independent. Learning how to change the diaper, learning how to feed him, put the milk on the stove with the water, and heat his bottle. He came home with a respirator, so he had to put his medicine in the respirator. Stuff like, I would steal formula and diapers for him. I would miss literally weeks on weeks of school. So I would say my childhood was stolen from me, right? I didn't choose this. It's just it's like you're telling an 8-year-old to step up to the plate and be a grown man, or a grown parent at that. And I did it because I love my little brother. I have no regrets of doing it, not at all. But there goes that cycle of, or that word you guys used early, adversity. So I do recall one day. So when you think about, if I'm missing school a lot, that gets back to like certain people, like the principal. The principal starts saying, okay, well, we got to do wellness checks on this child. We start bringing the CAS into the picture. So the CAS started coming around, and they kept giving my mother an opportunity to keep me, and you know she was able to keep me for a couple more years, until I do recall one day I was coming home. And I didn't have no like curfew, so I probably came home. I know I came home after 11 o'clock at night. I don't even know
Yeah.
if it was a school night or a weekend, but no 8-year-old or 9-year-old kid should be coming home after 11 o'clock. Period. And I remember I live on the 8th floor at the time, and I remember knocking on the door, and I could hear people in there, and no one would answer. I'm banging, I'm knocking, but I hear my little brother crying in the background, and I was like banging on that door, going crazy, like to the point where I ended up falling asleep right there. I don't know what my mom was doing. I like to believe she was turning tricks and getting high. That's what it is. Tell me nothing. That's what I believe. So I ended up falling asleep in front of my door. Um, to wake up to 2 police officers standing over me, obviously at like early in the morning, 6, 7 in the morning. Some people are going to work. They're probably seeing this young kid sleeping in front of their doorstep. This is not normal. Why is this? So I kind of thank them for calling the cops, because when the cops came and woke me up, it was like, okay, this is where I no longer was living with my mother. They took me, they put me in the custody of the children's aid. It's like, now you're unfit. You're unfit to be a mother, but my concerns still were to my little brother. I'm leaving. Who's going to take care of him? My mother can't take care of him. And sorry.
Well, before you continue your story, Donovan, because I know that you went to live with your aunt, right? That's
this is after. Yeah.
Yeah. So before you go on, do you remember how you felt like growing up this way? Like, what were some of the things that you were thinking about? Did you think this was normal, or did you feel like you weren't living a normal childhood?
Okay, I knew I wasn't living a normal childhood, because my friends at the time, their mothers were drug addicts, and let me explain to you how I viewed everything. Okay, it's rare that you find a 2-parent household in metro housing or the projects. It's rare. If you get a mother and a father raising their children in metro housing, you're lucky. So majority of everybody around me as friends growing up, it was a one parent household, and that was usually the mother, right? Dads weren't around. Dads were either selling drugs, in jail, or whatever the case may be. Deadbeats. I'll own that, because as I get into my story, I was a deadbeat. But I didn't feel it was normal. I was very, how would I say this? I was very lost in a world where I felt like at that age, who really loves me? I didn't receive love. I didn't know what love was. I didn't have guidance. I didn't have direction. Only guidance or direction I had were from the older men outside selling their drugs, and I, I I was molded by them, and I didn't understand I was being molded at that time, but I was being molded because they gave me that kind of security and safety blanket that I need, knowing that if I'm in this community, I'm safe. I'm not safe at home inside my doors, but I'm safe outside around them. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the way your situation affected you was that it essentially made you look, I guess, to your peers for that support,
Elsewhere.
that love,
Elsewhere.
that protection, right?
Definitely elsewhere. I looked for the love, safety, and support elsewhere because I didn't get it from home. Obviously, when you have a broken home, where else are you going to go look for it? In Metro House and in the projects, you're not getting it from home, so you have to find it somewhere else. And for individuals like myself and many others, we gravitate to the older people who are doing the things we know we shouldn't do, but we do it anyways because that's where we feel accepted. That's where we feel loved. That's where we feel, appreciated. So it wasn't normal. Definitely wasn't normal. I know I was out of my friends. I probably even my friends today who I talk to, like, and I don't have too many because a lot of them are locked up, dead, still living that lifestyle. But the ones who I do talk to still, they'll tell you themselves, like, you had it rough. You had it rough. My mom was I like to say my mom made my mom made a lot of my friends rich, put it that way. And when I think about it now, like a lot of people say, well, your friend sold drugs to your mother. Well, hey, listen, she was going to get it from somewhere, right? At least my friends didn't disrespect her, abuse her. What I mean? They gave her that kind of respect to know that, okay, that's Donavan and my two other brothers' mothers. We have to respect her because, we respect their sons. We're not going to tell them don't sell to our mothers. If you're our real friend, she's going to go get it somewhere else. And then you have that chance of either she's being disrespected, abused, taken advantage of. That didn't happen with my friends, at least. I know that was kind of weird. Like, you okayed this? Well, she's going to get it from somewhere. And I prefer people who we know that's going to respect her, knowing that, you're not going to disrespect her or hurt her. And it gave actually some comfort as I got older, knowing that she was getting it from people I knew.
So, and then what happened then once the cops found you sleeping outside of your place?
Okay, so as I said, that's when the Children's Aid really jumped in and really said, okay, this is an unsafe environment. You're not getting your essential needs. You're not being taken care of. You're not going to school. I ended up being brought to a foster home in Scarborough, where that's where I like to believe it was a blessing in disguise, but at the same time, it was part of probably like a worst part of my life too. Because as I was in the foster home, I was sexually molested for close to a year by an older kid. But when I talk about the blessing in disguise, is that if I wasn't taken from my mother at that time, I probably would have I don't know, I'd probably be dead a long time ago or doing a life sentence, which I say today I shouldn't be hearing so many different ways. And if you can read between the lines, it's real, right? But the blessing in disguise is, yeah, they came into my life. It's unfortunate what happened to me while I was at the foster home. And that's that, sexual trauma piece, right? But I was able to experience under the guardianship of the children's aid stuff like going to camp every year, paying for my sports, paying for my football camps, like anything I wanted when it came to extracurricular activities, they paid for it. So that's where I say the blessing in disguise, because I'm not getting that kind of attention or chances if I'm still living in Falstaff, right?
Thanks.
I'm not. So that's the blessing in disguise piece I talk about. So yeah, that lasted for about a year at the group home until they found out. So they removed the kid from the foster home, and then, as you said, you asked me about my living with my aunt, and this is 1991. I ended up going to Nova Scotia with my aunt. Okay, no, let me rewind that. In 1991, they had a court date set for my mother and my father to show up to court as who would get custody of me. Okay, so my father was in jail at the time, so he was unable to do anything. And my mother, obviously an active addiction, she just didn't show up, period. So when I was told, now you're going to be a crown ward of the city, of the government, that means now that the government is your legal guardian until you up to 21. So I remember my aunt. It's so funny because I remember at my grade school we did this play, The Wizard of Oz, and I had a role in The Wizard of Oz. I played the mayor of Munchkinland. And I remember asking my aunt to come to it, right? And she showed up, like someone took interest in something I was doing, right? And it meant the world to me. It meant the world to me at that point. And we kind of started having this visitation rights where I would go down maybe once a month to Don Mount Court and visit my aunts and start seeing my cousins, because my dad has a big family. And I remember my aunt saying, "Do you want to come to Nova Scotia with us for a wedding?" I'm like, "Yeah, for sure." And that was the summer of 1991. And I remember on the drive home, because we drove there, my aunt said, "Would you want to come live with us?" I said, "Yeah, I would definitely want to come live with you." And I did. I moved in with her for right after we came back from Nova Scotia. I ended up moving into their house in Donmount Court, and I thought at the time my aunt was doing this because she actually cared about my well-being and really just wanted to be an aunt who loves her nephew. I found out later it was all for the money, right? She didn't treat me the way she treated her children. I was less than, I was a dollar sign, and that's it, right? I paid for her mortgage, I paid for her car. And I'm just, whoever hears this, you can say whatever you want. That's the truth. Well, when you move into a place with a loved one, your aunt, your dad's sister, and he signs over his rights to her and says, "Please take care of my child." Mm-hmm. And you're telling the same child, because maybe he did something wrong at school or whatever the case may be, "Oh, you're just like your father. You're going to be just like your mother. Your mother's a prostitute, a whore." When you have to hear these things at such a young age, you really start to believe these things. And that just made me actually have more hate and anger and resentment towards my parents, because I didn't know my mom was a prostitute at the time. I just know things were going on. I didn't know what. But for you to tell me in that manner, it's like, really? you're really that cold-hearted that you could, in front of other people, say you're going to be just like your father. Your father's this, your father's that, your mother's this, your mother's that. So I was mentally traumatized.
Can I
Mentally.
ask you something, Donovan? So this is something I thought about, like when you were speaking. This is something I experienced, like when I started to actually, hear people say those things, those hurtful things about what my parents were. My mom's an addict. My mom also went to prison, and my dad was in prison, and all those things. Was there motivation for you not to be like that at some point in your life? Because I remember telling myself, like, I'm never going to be an addict. I'm never going to drink. I'm never going to do any of those things. I'm going to like completely be different than my mom. And as we both know, we didn't turn out like that. But was there a point where you're like, just so resentful at your mom or dad that you just like, I'm never going to be that person?
Definitely. I would say probably that that probably started happening more when I moved to Brampton from Toronto with my aunt, and I started playing sports. Because sports was my outlet to any negative stuff at the house with my aunt. I played 5 sports a year in high school. I hated going home after school. The less I had to be in that house is the less I had to endure. So, but back to what you said, I would truly start believing in 1993, 94, when I found out that my dad went to treatment or did an outpatient treatment course, and he started to get clean, right? And I said to myself, well, I don't ever want to have to be like my mother. I don't ever want to have to put my own my future children through what I went through. I just want to do something better than they did. And I believed in my heart I would, but I didn't realize I had this thing called an addictive personality. And I and I speak for myself. I believe every human being in this world has an addictive personality. It's just what they're addicted to, right? Unfortunately, I come from a bloodline where substance is something that can really take a hold of my family or me. I didn't know that at the time because I'm a late bloomer when it comes to doing any kind of substances. So I definitely told myself I'm not going to be like my mother. I'm not going to be like my father. That was probably right before I got into high school.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost harder too when you become that addict or you become that person that you never wanted to be, to kind of look at yourself in the mirror. And that's a rock bottom in its own, knowing that you're continuing that cycle.
For sure, for sure. And as you know, Jama, it's easier said than done, right? Like when you're in an environment when all you can do is go north, east, south, or west, left or right, and you're being subjected to these things, and I don't mean visual, like emotional, mental trauma. It's hard to believe in yourself. For me, it was hard to believe in myself. That's why I had to believe in sports as that outlet where it would let me do things I would have never been able to do under my mother's care. I would never
Hmm.
do that. And, growing up without a father teaching me how to throw a football, teaching me how to
Yeah.
skate, teaching me how to swing a bat, teaching me how to, hey, I learned that all on my own. So now I don't really care if you're getting sober. It was really like, fuck you. I don't care what you do. You signed over your rights for me to be verbally and emotionally abused by your sister. So now it's like, okay, my resentment is high for both parents, right? I have nobody. I remember telling my caseworker the verbal abuse and mental abuse I would get while I was living with my aunt, and she would report that back to my aunt. So I'm telling her this in confidence. And she would go back to my aunt and tell her, and then, whoa, would I get it even worse? There was no physical abuse, but the
Yeah.
emotional, mental abuse, the verbal abuse, it was strong. It was hard. It came, whenever around anybody, like belittle me, make me feel less than, and it was hard.
And
It was very
is that why you played sports so much as well, is to kind of escape that environment and not be home as much?
exactly why I played sports. It's exactly, and I wasn't very academically smart. I didn't have good grades. But I needed something to do so I didn't have to go into that house every day. And that's the only thing. I had to go home eventually, but the less amount of time there, if I had to wake up at 7 o'clock and go to school early to play basketball or train or whatever, I did it the least amount of time. That's why when summer came, I was away for the whole summer at away camp. I was a camp counselor. I did football programs. I did an outdoor ground course when I was 15 years old. A 21-day portage and canoe trip. I'm not doing these things in the projects. We don't do these things there. We're not given those opportunities to actually think outside the box and do things outside of our comfort zone. I took full, and that's what I say. I took full advantage of the children's aids resources when it comes to like sports and extracurricular, and like I use them to my advantage, where it benefited me for not being in that house as long as I can be.
I think that just goes to show how important these things are for kids who are developing, right? Like to be part of a sports team, to be physically active, to go away to camp and, be on your own and explore there, right? Like, because you came from such a place of not having much. And then once you were able to start participating in those activities, it sounds like it really started to bring out a lot of your good qualities and strengths.
Oh, for sure, because now I'm able to, I like to say I live both sides of the fence. You know what I mean? I was able to grow up in metro housing, and then I moved to Brampton, and then I'm living in the suburbs where now I'm exposed to what dual parent households look like. Right now that I got this envy towards my friends because while I'm playing sports and I'm the captain of my football team or rugby team or basketball team, I see their parents in the stands watching their kids, and I have nobody supporting me, right? So I'm like, look, wow, is this what it's like to have at least one parent support their
Yeah.
child? And remember, I'm living with my aunt who said, hey, I will take you, I will love you, I will treat you the way you need to be treated, I will do what I got to do.
Yeah, so it sounds like you didn't have like an encouraging kind of voice that's I really think, and I've talked with coworkers and Vaz about this. I think the role of a father is to be encouraging, right? When you think about those things you talked about, how to throw a ball, how to ride a bike, all those things are really encouraging. Like to show their kid that you're gonna fall down, but you got to get back up. That's to me that's the role of a father in a nuclear family. So not having encouragement or support, like how did that transition into finding support? And because I know about you transitioning into living the street life and selling drugs and eventually being part of the Falstaff Crips. So what was that transition like? Do you think not having a father and stuff like that played a role in you looking for that validation and from those people and from the streets?
So you're talking about not having a father. Okay. I'm gonna be brutally honest to you.
Yeah.
And I share this a lot with anybody I work with, like who has children. You know, us as parents will be our children's greatest teachers, right? It doesn't matter mother or father. We're supposed to be their best teachers as parents. So when you don't have neither one, you like I said, you look for something else. So in school, I ended up having my football coach, who was such an awesome man. Who by the time I was 17, I ran away from my aunt's house. I just couldn't take it no more. I just couldn't take it no more. And the children's aid put me on independent living. And I ended up living with my football coach. He took me in. for,
Wow.
for a year, while I graduated from high school. And this is a thing nobody in my mom's family had done prior to me. It was graduate from high school,
Yeah.
let alone get a scholarship for football.
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned how I was being molded while I was back in Falstaff. I didn't know, but I was being molded because I took a lot of my survival tactics, my independent skills that I learned as a kid, and as I got older into sports, taking that leadership role as being the captain of a football team, rugby, basketball team, and then my scholarship being rescinded and going to college in Toronto and having a daughter at a young age. I took those same skills I learned as a child and as in sports, and I said, okay, because now I'm exposed. I'm back in the big city, and I'm living where my brother and my grandmother lives. The neighborhood is it was ripe for the picking. They needed a leader. So I just flourished and I just said, okay, I'm gonna start my own thing out here. And I started my little gang and and that's when the things of like that acceptance, always looking for validation, looking for that power, that respect, but it's all false. I understand it today, but I needed it. I needed it to make up for that lost time. You know what I mean? Like, how we say we nurture the inner child, right? Well, that inner child never had a childhood. So now I'm trying to nurture it through some kind of a control factor, right? I'm controlling the narrative now. You do what I want you to do. You go where I want you to go. I have the power. I have the control, right?
Yeah.
So, and now I'm not really able to be my authentic self. I'm just being something that I feel will get me what I want. And in an environment where it's like predator or prey. And I refuse to be a prey, so I got to be predator. So now if you want to talk about that world, it's like I'm exposed to it. I have an older brother who's in a gang too. And it just was easy for me. Um, I met a lot of people along the way. I met a lot of people who were high up in the drug game, and they seen potential in me where I became, I met a lot of people who put me onto things, not in a good way, but it helped me financially at that point. And, I guess you would say that's when the trouble started happening, the violence, the in and out of jail, the addiction, because I do believe once I put that first drug in me, and like I said, I was a late bloomer. I didn't start doing anything until I was 19 years old. And yeah, when I had my first joint, my first ecstasy pill, it was like, wow, all those things I've endured, adversity, I don't have to think about it no more. I don't have to feel lost. I don't have to feel guilt. I don't have to feel shame. I don't have to feel period. No one likes that uncomfortable feeling of knowing this is what has happened to you throughout your life. It's very uncomfortable. And that's why for me, I gravitated to any and every drug that made me numb.
Yeah. So you were using, sounds like you were using the gang life and being a leader as a way to control your circumstances for the first time in your life, because when you were growing up, you had no control. And then you had the substances as well to numb out or to get some sense of love, even though it was through chemical means, right? So all of these, I guess you could say, quick fixes for the issues, the underlying issues, right? Or the emptiness that you're feeling as the result of all the trauma that you experienced growing up. How did that progress to you into where you were talking about at the beginning of the show, to that point where you stuck the needle in your vein to try to kill yourself?
So I'm a firm believer, Vaz, I know you too. You're a man of God. You're very spiritual. I know, Jama, you're a man of God too. I'm a firm believer. God put us here for a purpose. I believe we all have a special gift. I believe that, I always realize I did things, even though I was in that world of the streets, I did things while I was in the streets. Like I would hold a job down. I went to college. I went to college 3 times. So I was doing things people would never do, but I would never fully put my all into it the way I put my all into that world of the streets, the lifestyle, right? So I knew the resilience and the drive is in me,
Hmm.
but I just didn't really give it my all. You know what I mean? Because there would always be something pulling me this way, that way. And usually it's drugs. It was always drugs. I'd be at school, and because now I'm a full blown opiate addict, I can't be in school focusing so much because I'm sweating, and either I need my methadone or my hit to get me through a whole day. I, I remember right before my graduation from Mohawk College, a week before my graduation, um, I got raided. Right before graduating, I got raided, and I did so well. And this is another reminder, you know, you did so well that you could miss the last week of school and your exam and still get your certificates for your welding certificates and everything and still get the pass. It's like, so like if I can just give myself an honest effort, an honest chance of just trying to do things right or without substances, and I didn't know at that time what I was capable of, but I knew I was capable of doing something good because I'd done good along the way. But now when you have a pure heart, the fog is lifted, you have clarity, you have understanding, you have hope, you believe, you're not under no substances no more. Like, you start seeing what you're capable of doing. You start finding purpose, you start finding meaning, you start believing that, I'm not a loser. I'm not a loser. I made some bad choices. Yes, I understand that. But I'm still here. And I can go right back to that damn thing, that situation that happened when I put that needle in my arm and I heard something in my head saying, I'm not ready for you. I'm not ready for you. There's more to do. And that's where I started saying, that's my higher power telling me, hey, Donavan, no, it's not going to happen this way. You're going to wake up and you're going to give yourself a chance. You have work to do. You have to help people. You have to get out there and try to be a voice for young men and women who live in metro housing and who are probably in the same similar position as you, to let them know that it's possible. There's good people out there that want to help you and direct you and guide you. That's what I need to do, and that's what I'm gonna do.
Let me ask you. So I know obviously something's changed in you where you're able to be more vulnerable. I know that happens for a lot of people, and you're one of the people that will go up there and talk about their traumas in front of a room full of people. And it's very admirable to be able to do that, and something I advise anyone to do that's kind of done the step work and gone through the work. So would you say at what point did you find that courage to be able to go up? Like I know you do that in front of people, and you're like, this is what happened to me as a child, and this is the type of abuse I went through. And usually, my presumption is someone comes up to you after a young man or young lady comes up to you and says, "Thank you so much, Donovan, for being able to share that. That really helps me because I didn't know people could go through that and be strong today." Like, was that early on, or was that later on? You were able to like share that kind of stuff and be that inspiration in the rooms.
Well, I look at it like this: if I'm gonna help people, if I'm gonna try to be someone who can give guidance or direction, I better be willing to let them know what I've been through.
Yeah.
For me, right? You know what I mean? Because I got I got I got to be real with you. And being real is telling my story, and being real is being vulnerable. And it did happen very early for me. I think once I started talking about my sexual trauma and everything, and I would say that probably happened by the time I maybe very right at the start of my recovery, because in 1999 when I went to college, I wanted to go to take social service. I wanted to be work in the social service,
Yes.
right? 1999, right? I ended up taking food service and hospitality, right? I just wasn't ready. So I believe God has a plan for us. So, and this is where my God, it works in mysterious ways. You know, I believe my God said this is going to be your journey for the next 18, almost 20 years of trials, tribulations, hardships, jails, violence, and you're going to go through it, and you're going to get out of it, and you're going to go back out there and let them know it can be done. Because now, if you look at what I'm doing today, it's something what I wanted to do almost over 22 years ago, and I'm
Yeah.
doing it today. So whatever I went through in that time period in between to now was my blueprint, how to do it and how to resonate with people, because they're going to resonate. Most will resonate with me
Yeah.
because they hear something, and they hear hope. They hear, wow, vulnerability. A lot will say, well, if you can do it, why can't I? And that's the gift that God has bestowed upon me today. I have to. And if I, the word, you got to get working. We got to put that work in. And I just felt like I'm going to be an open book. I have nothing to lose. I no longer feel shackled. I no longer
Mm-hmm.
feel chained. I do not have to, you know, let whatever happened to me be an embarrassment, because I'm not the only one who's gone through it. And that's where it really started clicking in with me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not the only one who's gone through this. There's millions of people that's had it worse than me and that have prevailed and done well in life. I'm one out of millions. So there's nothing that special where I got to continue to hold that in. Let's let it out.
Mm-hmm.
Let the healing begin.
Mm-hmm.
Because once I started being vulnerable and letting the healing begin, I really started seeing, okay, there's people coming up to me and saying, I resonate with you. That happened to
Yeah.
me. Because of you, I'm able to speak today. Because of you, I have hope today. As all three of us here are counselors, there's no better feeling when a client can come up to you and say, thank you. You've helped me get to where I am today. You are a big part of why I am where I am today. There's no better feeling than that. There's no drug, no drink, no woman that would
Yeah.
take that away from me today. No money.
Yeah.
That's the reward and piece of my job, because it's the ultimate act of service. I'm giving back. I'm not selfish no more. I'm selfless. I have to. You understand it, Vaz and Jama. You both understand it.
Yeah, it's more than any amount of money ever. I try to explain that to people, like when you get that experience, and I know you've had that experience, and Vaz, you probably had that experience where they come up to you and they have a genuine message of like, thank you so much for saying that, and you helped change my life. And for me, sometimes it makes me want to cry because it provides me with so much meaning in my life. Like I always tell the clients, you got to do something. You got to have a reason to wake up on a bad day in life. Like that's my piece of advice. Find something that's a reason to wake up on a bad day. And for me to wake up on a bad day is to go in and know that I'm inspiring people. And those moments where they kind of come up to you, that subsides any bad reason or any bad time, because you're going to go through bad times in recovery. But if you're not doing something worthwhile, which is our jobs and what we do, then you're just going to crumble.
Yeah, my counseling job at the treatment center has also been one of the reasons for me to keep myself in check about my own habits and lifestyle, right? Because as we all do, we go through these ups and downs. And, you know, when I'm going through those downs where I'm not necessarily praying as much, meditating as much, you know, taking care of my mental health or physical health, whatever it is, I always think, you know, how can I serve others if I'm not the best version of myself, right? How can I tell you what to do when I'm not doing it? And so in a lot of ways, having that job has helped me to keep myself more accountable and have a purpose. So I resonate with that. But for, you know, Donavan, for me, I remember that initially I wanted to work the steps and recover from addiction because I was just so sick and tired of living that life. I didn't know what sober life would be like. In fact, the thing that scared me the most was how am I actually going to navigate life without any substances. But eventually that did change to, okay, I'm starting to feel really good. And this is something that I want to preserve, right? I no longer feel like I want to go back to that way. I want to kind of cultivate this new feeling and see how much it can grow. Did you have that moment as well during your own recovery?
Oh man, yeah, let me touch on something before I get into that because I think it will lead into this. Um, so when I did reach out to my father and I ended up leaving London on the first Greyhound bus to Toronto, you know, I sat in front of a church, High Park group, on a Sunday evening right before I went into to the meeting, and the faucet's open, so I was just bawling. I was just bawling. My dad said something so profound to me, and it was just something simple as, "Hey, it's time to grow up. 38 years old, going on 39. It's time to grow up." And you know, all that hate and resentment towards my father, right at that moment, it disappeared. You know, and I'm gonna tell you why, because you've heard me say this before, and it's so real for me. It's like, you know, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? You know, I went through all those years of whatever I was doing out there in my active addiction or in the streets. My father was preparing himself for the moment I decided I was ready. So when the student is ready, me, the teacher will appear, my father, right? He was never there for me as a child. I'll own that. He'll tell you that it was like an eclipse, like a shooting star. It's rare that it happens, whatever the case may be, where I would see him. So when I really needed him, he was there for me.
Mhm.
I have right now a 23-year-old daughter who, you know, is one of us. So when the student is ready, my daughter, I want to continue to work and be the best version of myself so I can be that teacher to appear for her when she's ready, and only when she's ready, because it'll only work when she's ready. Coming into recovery, wow, I was so scared because I never knew how to live on the other side of the fence. So when I mean the other side of the fence, from my fence, so that world was, you know, actual full-time job, paying bills, you know, fixing my credit, um,
Driver's license.
driver's license, taxes. Um, I owed almost $25,000 in family responsibility. So that tells you, and I'll own it today. My active addiction when I was out there, I was a deadbeat father. I let that build up until I came into treatment, and they said, "Okay, well, you're working now. Guess what we got to do? We got to start paying your what you owe us, right?" That's scary because that's a lot to deal with, and that's why I thank God I made the decision to go to sober living, because there's no way I would have been financially, first of all, ready to live on my own and support myself in Toronto, anywhere in Toronto, because we know how expensive it is. And I just know myself knowing that if I'm not going to be able to make money to live legitimately, I always got a backup plan because I can sell, I can hustle. That's never been a problem. It's just that I can't hustle and not use. Like that's the cliche saying: if you sit in a barber chair long enough, you'll get a haircut. Well, if I
Mhm.
sell drugs long enough, I'm going to start using it eventually, right? And even my counselor said, Donavan, you can never go back to that life. You can never go back to that lifestyle. The people in that lifestyle, you pray for them and hope they get out sooner than later, but you can't even hang out with them. And I was like, okay, perfect. I didn't want to because when I came in, I just wanted to learn how to stop using drugs so I can go back out there and sell drugs and make my money without, touching my profit or smoking my profit up. That was my thought process at the time. I'm fresh. I don't know no better. This is a new world to me. I've never gone through treatment, and when it really kicked in to say that, what, I would probably say after my 6 months of treatment, and I started saying, okay, well, let's go to school. Let's try school again. It's not like I haven't done it before. Well, now you're kind of clear-headed. You're dealing with the traumas. You're dealing with the underlying issues. You're not overwhelmed. This committee isn't running your life no more. You have a little bit of peace. You've cut out a lot of people out of your life who aren't going to drag you back into that world. You're finding a community of like-minded people who are supportive, where you can pick up the phone and call them. You have your sponsor, you have your father, have like-minded people like yourselves, Vaz and Jama. It's like, okay, why don't I give myself a chance at this world? And that's where I said, okay, I could see myself in this field as a counselor and giving back.
Did,
So,
did, did, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that, didn't you say that the lifestyle that you were living, like the gang lifestyle, the money, the power, the girls, that was in a way even more difficult to give up than the drugs themselves, right? So what would you say to people who may be in your position right now, who are living that life and quote unquote enjoying the fruits or the benefits of it? Like, what reason can you give them to give all of that up and to come to our side of recovery, of God-based or spiritual-based living?
It doesn't last forever. It's not sustainable. You know, it eventually comes to an end. And we talk about jails, institutions, or death. It's the same thing with that lifestyle too, right? It doesn't last forever. Um, it's only a matter of time. And I don't wish none of those things on anybody. Like I got my two brothers who, are entwined in that lifestyle still. And, I pray for them, right? I can't tell them what to do. They're grown men and, you know, it just doesn't last.
So what advice would you give to, so I know there's a lot of people in recovery that like, my story as well, like, your family is entrenched in this thing. Like I'm the only one in my family that is in sobriety. And what advice do you give to people who kind of have that family background where you're going to be the only one sober, you're the only one going to college or,
Well, okay, I'm going to flip this and you probably will agree with me. Wouldn't you say to them, what do you have to lose? What do you have
yeah,
to lose? What do you really have to lose? Because you and I both know what we've gained, but what do you really have to lose by giving yourself a chance at life
yeah,
to experience,
100%.
things today? Because I'm not. I would say I'm still a newbie, a newcomer in recovery, going on 4 years. I still believe I'm a newcomer. But what I've experienced in these past almost 4 years, I've dreamed about it for 38 years.
Yeah.
I
One of the
dreamed.
things I've learned too is just you can't change family. You can't change, your brother. Like, I have two brothers right now, and I pray for them all the time. But there's nothing I can do to change it. I think the best way to kind of attack that problem is just to be the best version of yourself. Because I know, like you said, you're saying, you know, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Like any day of the week, like doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I get that phone call, like, yo, Jama, I'm trying to, you know, join your side, I'm there, you know, and I got so many people to send them to. So I think the best way to my advice would be, I guess, kind of just be the best version of yourself and have faith that, you know, they're going to make that phone call just like you made to your father. And that would be my outlook on it, I guess. But let me ask you, so, you know, going
So
through.
let me stop you for 1 second right there, John, and I don't mean to cut you off. So the best thing I can say right now is I can show you better than I can tell you. And in our world of recovery, the fellowship, it is attraction rather than promotion,
Yeah.
right? They're going to want what you have one day. They're going to ask how you got it. You know what I mean? They're gonna see you traveling. They're gonna see you one day get your, you know, have the house, and the material things are the least of our concerns. They're gonna see an aura, a presence about you that you're just at peace with self. And they're gonna want that eventually. Hopefully sooner than later, because we can't
Yeah.
predict when our disease or the substance will take over and take you to another world you can't come back from. But all I can do is be about action, showing up for work and showing up for life every day, being the best man I can be, being the best father I'm trying to be the best fiance, one day husband I can be, a stepfather, sponsor, counselor, and a loyal servant of God.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. So, you know, you've transitioned to now having a fiance. And I think I've talked to you, that's very commendable, you know, growing up the way you did to be in a loving relationships, because we don't really get the best attachment styles, you know what I mean, growing up that way. So what are your goals for the future? Like, what is your plan, Donovan? Like, tell me what you want in life. I know you're working on a documentary and stuff like that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's documentary that actually started with father. And it's ironic. I was talking to this girl right before I got into treatment. We were talking, and her friend is from Houston, Texas, but he married a girl from Toronto, and he was showing her snippets of the documentary, and he happened to show her snippets of my father being in this, and she goes, "I know that man. I know his son, and his son's pretty much in the same lifestyle." So she reached out to me and connected us, and this is right when I went into treatment, literally. So I remember doing my first interview with him in the back of my treatment center at Harbor Light, and we did like a 45-minute sit down, and yeah, the treatment, the documentary, we're trying to push it out for this year at TIFF. It will probably be on the red carpet this year for TIFF. We're trying to finish it up on by April and submit it. But there might be more to it, because I think from what I was being told that they want to actually dive into the my father's life and my life and make it into like a mini series. So there's a lot happening for me, you know, with I'm probably going back to school again some point, probably by the end of the year or early next year, you know, making plans to get married for next year.
Marriage.
My fiance and I are praying, you know, we're working on fertility. I want to have another child. I want another go at it.
Definitely.
You know, I can't. You know, everything's falling into place the way it's supposed to. I don't rush it. I just accept it, and you know, I'm just grateful that I'm in a position today to be the man I am today, I guess.
Absolutely. You know, we're gonna link that YouTube clip in the bio of this video for sure. It's gonna be amazing. Do you see yourself like doing like any sort of like motivational speaking to the Black community or anything like that? Like, how do you feel like you could be a role model for the Black community, in that way?
Well, for sure. Anytime I can be a service to go back to the place that made me, I would say MTA and the projects or whatever, I have to give back. I always want to be do any kind of outreach with gang preventions. I'm nothing. I'm pro-black. You know what I mean, I see the injustice that we suffer, um, and I think we need more individuals like you and myself that just want to shed light on the injustice because there's so much. You know, I do also believe, like you make your bed, you lay in it, right? I do believe in that, right? We have choices, and I believe that, our criminal justice system is very lenient. You know,
Yeah,
I'll tell you one thing, if I was in America with my charges I've accumulated over the years, I'll probably never be out.
for sure.
I'll
Very
probably
soft in Canada.
very soft, and that's jail's supposed to be a deterrent. You know what I mean? And these kids nowadays they're not afraid of what the consequences are because you're not hearing people get life sentences. It's like 15, 18 years, 10. You do something at the age of 18, you still got a whole life to live when you come out. Um, I think stricter gun laws. I think harsher drug penalties if it's in the area of sales. If you're selling drugs, and we understand there are users, but now if you're talking about being a plug or being the main person, you have to
Yeah.
have strict laws because we're killing people out there. I was killing people out there doing what I was doing, selling drugs to people. I know that. I don't know. I probably ruined a lot of families. You know what I mean? I know I did. I probably ruined a lot of families along the way.
I like how you talked about preventative, criminal justice involvement, and I like that word preventative because I really think that's something where the Black community can benefit a lot from is that preventative piece. Like, let's attack the problem before it becomes a problem, because oftentimes we try and rehabilitate people after the problem, but getting that seed planted in them at a young age. I think I would have benefited so much if, I had like a motivational speaker come in when I was like 15, 16, and, just had that seed planted. Like, you can have this kind of life and you can be sober and you can, have a purposeful life and you can be a loving person. You can get rid of your trauma. I would have been so motivated by that. So I think that preventative part is going to be a huge part in, strengthening Black communities and that role model piece. It's something common I hear all the time whenever I tell people about what the Black community could use more of. And I think I hear role model and mentors like common every single time I have that discussion.
Definitely, we gotta get them while they're young. We gotta get them while they're young, but they have to look at you and say, "I resonate with you." You look like me. You know what I mean? It's hard to go into a community and they're gonna say like, "Well, who are you? Have you gone through what I'm going through?" They have to feel that sense of security and safety. Like I look at you and I say, okay, yeah, you're from my neighborhood and you made it out of my neighborhood and you're doing well. It gives them more sense that it's possible compared to someone from the outside coming in.
Yeah,
It's not going to have that much weight. It's not
yeah,
going to have that much weight at all.
What's
yeah.
amazing though is that your story, even though I didn't grow up anything like you, resonated with me, right? Because as I said in the introduction, when I heard all the obstacles that you had to overcome, all the adversity that you faced, man, like it inspires me to do better, right? And to like yeah, to really take action towards improving the whatever my situation is. But Donovan, we've been talking for a while now. let's wrap things up, and maybe have you on the podcast a second time at some point to share more wisdom, because I know you probably have so much more that you could talk about, and suggestions or advice you could give. But why don't we finish with by asking you, if you were to talk to somebody who's now in the position that you were in, where you were suffering from addiction and felt hopeless, what would you tell that person?
You know what? Addiction is a selfish disease, right? It's a selfish disease. But honestly, I need to hear the real. I need you to be honest with me. And as harsh as this sounds, because it was told to me and it resonated with me, it really made me look inward when I was told this by my father. It's time to grow up. You know what I mean? It's nothing against your age. It's about your maturation, where you are in life, what you're doing in life. If you can look at yourself honestly and say, well, I'm maybe 38, but my mental and my mental capacity is at a 18-year-old, or my emotional intelligence is at an 18-year-old. Well, I got to catch up to the 38, and I got to start understanding that it's time to stop thinking that the world owes me something. I owe it to myself. If I want to get things right in life, I have to do some work. And that really means I have to grow up. And I say that for myself. And, some people need to hear that, especially a lot of us alcoholics and drug addicts out there. I don't get me wrong. I understand there's underlying issues to why we do the things we do. Okay, well, then we got to grow up and say, hey, let's get to work and start working on these things. Because we don't fix them if we don't work on them. Let's be vulnerable. Let's be open. Let's be willing. Let's practice discipline. Let's find structure and routine in our lives. Let's just be healthy all around, mind, body, and soul.
Nice. I love it, man. That's, for me, that resonates big time. There's no sugarcoating it. It is what it is, right? I know you and your wife have a t-shirt business as well. Do you want to talk about that as we close?
Yeah, for sure. My fiance and I, well, more my fiance, she makes the shirts, but she has uh designs by Ashley, and she's on IG. If you want to post it up, if you can post it up, you guys said you're able to do that.
Yeah. We'll add a link. We'll add a link to our Instagram.
Where whatever you want, positive quotes, positive affirmations, sober as fuck shirts, whatever you feel, you want on that shirt, we're willing to make it for you. And, we're here to inspire. And, I think if you follow her page, you'll see a lot of the shirts that she's made are more inspirational and motivational quotes that I think a lot of us just need to live by, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's sick. Okay, cool, man. We'll definitely post a link to that. Donovan. Yeah, and we appreciate you being on the show. I said, maybe we'll have you back on another episode at some point. But I think for today, you definitely shared a lot of great messages, and your story itself just speaks volumes. So thank you for being here today.
You are definitely not a statistic, brother. And, I wish I was wearing my shirt today, but I have a shirt from Donavan and Ashley's business. It says, I'm not a statistic. And I think we kind of came up with that quote together. So thank you so much for all your wisdom. And it's always a pleasure having the, real talks with you and getting down to the real nitty gritty stuff of life. So thank you again, brother.
I'd like to say thank you to both of you, Vaz, the spiritual guru, and Jama, the young buck who has proven that, You know, we can get it early, and you're proof that you can get it early. Your drive to succeed and do well in life is very inspirational, to be honest, because you know you're doing something at your age that, you know, I'm pretty sure Vaz and I would have loved to have done when we were at your age. But you know, you're given hope, and you continue to do what you do because, you know, you're needed out there too, right? You're needed. And Vaz, I love what you do. And your spiritual intelligence, your spiritual wellness is like above and beyond what I could possibly imagine, right? But I inspire to get there one day, you know what I mean? And meditation's not my greatest therapy, but you know, I might get there one day. But I admire you too, the way you're able to just quiet everything down and just focus on you, the here and now, and channel that inner strength you have. It's admirable too. So, you know, thank you both for having me here, and I look forward to you guys meeting me probably.
Thank you, brother. Likewise. God bless you.
God bless you.
God bless.
Okay, brothers.